Sometimes I look at my phone, not always though.
Okay, let me give you one other scenario. Let's say that you're at the grocery store and you're at the checkout line and the person in front of you has a ton of stuff and it's going to be a while and you're going to have to stand there. What do you usually do with yourself in that moment?
Oh yeah, I definitely look at my phone. I definitely look at my phone.
Okay, so simply put, this awesome little supercomputer that we keep in our pocket, it gives us access to unlimited knowledge as well as unlimited levels of Candy Crush. So we've got all this access to anything at our fingertips. But the problem is that it also hinders our ability to ever be bored. So we live in an age where boredom never has to be an option. Now, why is that such a big deal? Well, it turns out that boredom and imagination, they're actually closely connected. In fact, neuroscientist Daniel Levitin, he says that we get the most creative when we simply let our minds meander.
Let your brain just wander. It's important for problem solving. If you can't solve the problem by thinking about it deliberately, it may be that it requires the kind of solution that only comes from making connections between things that you hadn't seen as connected before. And that's what the mind-wandering mode excels at.
So every single time that we start to feel just a little bit bored, we start juicing up, right? I don't know what to do with myself. I feel all this anxiety. And we get out our phone and we take our hit. And we're stopping ourselves from ever having that moment and that experience where we finally get bored. Mind-wandering mode triggers our imaginations. And scientists, they also call this mode our brain's default mode. And this time that our brain is most in this default mode, it's when we're bored. If we're never bored, we never have to use our imagination. And of course, no boredom means no creativity, means no leadership. No boredom means no creativity, means no leadership. So I want you to understand why this is important. When we only accept whatever is presented to us, and we never allow ourselves to begin to wonder and dream and imagine and become bored, then we stop envisioning possible futures. So churches die because they can't imagine how the gospel applies to modern times. Marriages die because a spouse cannot imagine that their marriage is ever going to be any better than it is. Christian young adults, you guys could end up living robotic, meaningless lives where you cannot hear the voice of God. Why? Because it's hard to imagine anything different than what is presented to us. And all of this is simply because of the fact that it's hard to imagine a different future. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to actually exercise our imagination. So everybody get out your imagination bags. Everybody hold them up. Everybody open them up. Open up your bags. So we partnered with Tesla in the design of these bags. Our team all worked in our outstanding sweatshop facilities to craft these just for your school. So, so hold your bag up. Okay, now with your other hand, hold your phone up. Okay? Now, what I want to tell you is this. No one's going to touch your imagination bag. Nobody touch anybody else's imagination bag. Okay, take your imagination bag, lay it in your lap. And now, take your phone, gently lay it inside the bag. And now repeat after me. Look down at your phone and say, "Phone, I need some me time." And then roll your bag shut and lay it at your feet. All right, and just like that, folks, we are ready to engage our imaginations. So let's go back to that time that I was 18 years old and I'm sitting in the basement of this hotel. So I'm so captivated by what this man says that I get these great imaginations from him. He's just filling me with all these desires and what is possible. So I actually ended up moving after high school. Instead of going off to college, I moved to Oakland, California. I moved to a community where I was one of only 8 white folks at my church. I was overwhelmingly the minority in my neighborhood. All of a sudden, I'm exposed to an entire other way of life. I'm living in community with other Christians from all over the United States. It was an incredibly transformative experience. And I did it all because that guy got into my imagination. And suddenly, all those passages of Scripture, he's talking about, there's 2,000 passages of Scripture about God's concern for the poor. And all of a sudden, they're coming alive to me. Like, I'd almost wondered, when he said that at first, I'm going like, are we reading the same Bible? Like, do you have a different Bible than I do? And sure enough, it's true. Every single book, the stuff that he's talking about, it's in there. And so I get out there, and the gospel begins to come alive to me. It's living and moving. It's in my neighborhood, and it was on my street, and the gospel was in me. So after that, I moved back to Louisville, and my imagination, it started to wonder, well, how can I use these experiences back home? My imagination had been so stirred, and so now what am I supposed to do with that? So in 2005, there's a homeless rescue mission, and they've got this empty apartment, and they don't know what to do with this empty apartment. They end up contacting me, and they say, we've got this apartment, we don't know what to do with it. We know that we don't want to use it for programming because we've already got lots of housing for folks that are homeless. We want to do something different. And I thought, I know what to do with that apartment because of this experience that I've had. And so I started wondering what would happen if young Christian leaders lived and worked among the poor intentionally. And that question, it was haunting me, and I wanted to explore it. And so we ended up coming up with this crazy idea for this program where people were going to move to Louisville, and at that time, they were actually going to move into the homeless shelter and live in this apartment. And I thought to myself, who in the world is crazy enough to do this? And it turns out that these guys were crazy enough to do it. They kind of look crazy in this picture, too. They look like kind of backwoods, don't know where you don't want to run into these guys when your car breaks down. So these guys came, and they were a part of this year program, and we started getting the word out about more opportunity where you can come and serve the homeless and live with folks that are homeless and give an entire year of your life. And we were amazed because year after year, more people kept showing up. What an amazing thing to see this year after year, these young adult leaders coming and being a part of the work that God was doing. So eventually, started looking around at other nonprofits around our city, and they were doing incredible work, just like the rescue mission. They were providing alternatives to abortion and working with people that were struggling with homelessness, but there's neighborhood renewal and visual arts and orphan care and healthcare, all these great nonprofits, but they were dramatically understaffed. And so I started wondering to myself, well, what if we could impact more areas of need? And so I came up with this idea called Love Thy Neighborhood. But there was a problem. And the problem was this. The problem was that around that exact same time, I got called into a meeting with our board of directors. And they called me into this meeting at the homeless shelter because they needed to go over some financial reports. And here's what I realized. As I sat in front of them, and they're all going through these reports, I didn't understand anything we were talking about. It was as if an alien had landed on our planet and had written down a bunch of things, and then they put it in front of me and said, help us translate this. I didn't understand what I was looking at. And I could tell in the course of the meeting, I could see the confidence of this board of directors just going down and down and down. And they weren't subtle about it. And they ended up communicating to me, we really lost a lot of confidence in you that day because we had entrusted you with a lot. And here it is that we're asking for accountability and for these reports, and you're not able to give us good answers. And so I'm haunted now by this other thing. Okay, so I feel like I've imagined this possible program, this thing called Love Thy Neighborhood, but here it is that I don't know how to do some of what is necessary. Suddenly, my imagination was not a gift. Suddenly, it was causing problems because I was so lost in my thoughts and my ideas and my visions that I wasn't able to execute things on the ground level the way that the people around me were depending on me for. And so I ended up actually going to a woman named Kiana. She had done our program, and I knew Kiana was a details person. And I thought, okay, if Kiana can help me launch this thing, it's going to be good. So it'll be perfect. I'll be the vision guy with the big ideas. She'll be the person who makes to-do lists and actually does the things on the to-do list. It's going to be a perfect marriage. So here's Kiana to tell you about that.
So my name is Kiana Brown. I serve as the operations administrator / manager of everything else that people don't do that falls between the cracks.
Okay, so Kiana is what some of you might call a realist. Sometimes I call her a cynic. But she just gets things done. She is just super, super efficient, and she's got like color-coded to-do lists, and sometimes she comes in and it seems like her outfit matches her to-do lists, and she's just like super detail-oriented. So what happens when a dreamer like me and a realist like Kiana end up working together? Well, again, here's Kiana to tell you her experience.
It was just, I felt like I couldn't get anything done. It felt very chaotic, like a new idea popping up every 5 minutes. Literally every 5 minutes, some days. Not all days, but some days. And I didn't know where we were going because there was like new ideas all the time.
And honestly, at the beginning, like I didn't really know that all of my ideas and my imagination was like so frustrating to her. But one day she kind of clued me into that pretty clearly.
I decided to limit his ideas to 3 a day. Because some of his ideas were just completely random out there. One day he was like, we should do this running app where people can send in encouragement, and while you're running a race, you would listen. I was like, this has nothing to do with homelessness or young adults or social justice. No. So I said, you can have ideas, that's fine, but you only get 3. So they better be your very best 3 ideas.
Dude, that running app idea is so good. So it turns out that limiting my ideas, it actually really was helpful for Kiana, but it also ended up being really helpful for me.
At first, he might, say his first idea. I'm like, okay, he has 3. He wants his first one at 9 a.m. Okay, it's a little early, but it's fine. And then, maybe he has his second idea and it's before lunch. And I'm like, oh boy. And so then we're getting close to lunch. She's like, I have an idea. And I'm like, okay, this is your 3rd one. Like, this is your final idea. Do you really want this to be the idea? So, and sometimes he'd be like, it's so important. And other times, it's just something that popped in my head. So I think it helped me because I was more focused, but it also helped him not to just say every idea that popped into his head.
So I think in our society, a lot of times we hold up creative types and visionary folks as like the more ideal leader. And I don't think that that's always true. I'm not here actually to tell you that at all. What I'm here actually to tell you is that I think that there are 2 types of folks in this world. So the first kind of person is a balloon. And balloons are whimsical, and they're imaginative, and they're entertaining, and they like make life just feel like full of possibilities. And the other kind of folks are weights. They're tied to the ground, and they're grounded, and they're really based in the moment. Well, if you're somebody like me and you're a balloon, you need a weight. Because what happens? That balloon is now up there, and it ain't helping anybody. It's hard to get to. It's hard to help anybody. It's not making us feel any better. We're all now staring at the balloon going like, how's he going to get the balloon down? It's not a helpful thing. And at the same time, a rock on its own, a weight on its own, it's just laying there. It's just doing its thing, doing what a rock does day in and day out. But what can happen when a balloon and a weight find one another? The balloon, it offers hope and fun and curiosity and playfulness, and the weight keeps it tethered to reality. It keeps it within reach. It gives it its purpose. Just moments before we were walking in and we had these balloons, and the door to the car opened up and one of the balloons slipped out. Gone. Lost in the clouds. Endlessly dreaming. And so what I'm here to say is this, is that for all of us, we're either weights or we're balloons. Here's Kiana one last time.
He's able to help me because I can get so stuck in the finite little details that I forget to like dream and envision and get excited about the next thing or the big project. So he kind of pulls me out of that like funk of everyday routine, and then I'm kind of able to bring him down more to reality from the dreamy, unrealistic state.
So what were we able to do once Kiana and I were able to figure out this relationship? Well, once we started to figure out this relationship, we were actually able to take not only vision, but to put a lot of structure behind things, to be able to give form to it, to take something out of abstract and make it very, very grounded and concrete. And so in 2014, we were able to launch Love Thy Neighborhood. And we centered it around three things: nonprofit service, intentional community, biblical discipleship. Nonprofit service, this idea of like get young adults out on the front lines, get them in the trenches with all of these great ministries, doing work with folks that are in crisis. Intentional community, the way that young adults love each other, the way that they learn to do life with each other in their 20s, it becomes the way they do it in their 30s, in their 40s, in their 50s. Let's show them how to do life with each other. And then biblical discipleship. Let's not just do good for the sake of doing good. Let's also be people that grow in our faith in Jesus, get to know him and follow him and be obedient to him and grow in our faith. And so Kiana was able to bring so much form and structure to all of these ideas. And we started putting the word out about Love Thy Neighborhood. I knew the folks had been interested in the homelessness thing, but I started to get concerned. Would people be interested in all of these different things? You know, we have 17 different internships. Are these things going to resonate? And I was so encouraged because the answer was yes. And folks started to come from all over the place. And more folks came, and more folks came. This gets funnier the longer you look at it, by the way. You know, just this last month, we had somebody come to us from England. Last year, we had somebody serve with us from Hawaii. Why would you move from Hawaii to Kentucky? Because she had heard about what God was doing in our city, and she wanted to come and to be a part of it. If you want to be a leader, you've got to be able to imagine. You've got to give yourself the time to be bored. You've got to give yourself the time to dream. You've got to give yourself the time to begin to ask the questions, what if? If you want to be a leader, you have to surround yourself with good community. There's no great leader, good leader, who doesn't have community around them. Every great leader has a great community, and every great leader will tell you that they get way too much credit. So if you're more like a balloon, find yourself a weight. And if you're more like a weight, then you need to find yourself a balloon. And if you want to be a leader, then do what that Christian speaker did for me in the basement of that hotel. You have to give people a future that is worth imagining. Thank you, guys.
Hey guys. Okay, so a couple quick announcements. See, this is why we built in debrief time, because we're running 11 minutes behind schedule, and it doesn't matter because we don't start till 11. So we're going to take 19 minutes. We've got a group of students who are passing out debrief questions again for you, and those again can be used to spur conversation with people sitting around you or to journal, reflect on. So it might be easier to just hang out in this room since we don't have a ton of time, but if you guys would rather like go find a table with a couple of people and talk, that's great too. We'll be starting back in here at 11 with our keynotes from Nicole and Matt. A couple quick announcements too. There are going to be books for sale by some of our speakers in the Express store down like where the food is, and I don't think that they're open yet, but when they open today, you'll be able to buy those. We'll also have mugs for sale later at some point, probably. Look for a table, I guess. Yeah, I think that that's it. Great, thanks.